mind of God. And we're speaking about how your mind, how your emotions influence your daily life. And today we are so excited. We have Elise Marie Miller, and she's going to speak to us about a book that she has written. And this book is about 9 personalities and the seasons that they've gone through. Now, the reason we are doing this is if we look at the Bible, we see the Bible as a book of good news. But this happened thousands of years ago. So if we say good news, we can ask the question, if it's good news, was it good news for them then? Let's say, for instance, if we take the crucifixion of Jesus and he rose from the dead, yeah, that's good news for him. It's good news for his family. But how can it be good news for us today? So today we're going to look at 9 personalities and their seasons. We're going to look at this book and we're going to see how this impacts our life today. Welcome. It's so great to have you with us today.
Good morning, Albert. Thank you. It's lovely to be back. I remember we've been together on a video, I think probably about a year or two ago. It was great to be back.
Yeah, it's so great. Yeah, I actually forgot to say this. This is not her first time with us. This is her second time with us. So tell us a bit more about the book, about the title, and then we're going to go into some of the personalities and the seasons.
It's a pleasure. The book is called Where Am I? And this is my second book, Albert. And the first book was called Who Am I? And this one is called Where Am I? And people have been teasing me about what's up with all these interesting questions. But do you know, Albert, if you want to drive somewhere, this is how I explain it. If I use Google Maps all the time, and I love just, sitting in my car, typing in the address where I'm going, and then just hitting the direction button. And within a second, Google Maps can immediately identify my destination, right? It says, great, I know exactly where you want to go. But when I hit the direction button, it actually asks me to first switch on my own location services, because Google Maps cannot direct me towards my destination until Google Maps know where am I now.
Wow. That's amazing. So what you are actually saying is a lot of people know where they want to go, but they don't know where they are.
Exactly, Albert. A lot of us strive towards in our careers, maybe in marriages or in our parenting or in friendship relationships or in our church and space or in our relationship with Jesus. We know where we want to go. But if you don't know where you are now, how are you going to know what are the risks, what are the opportunities? And why I called it Where Am I Now is because I look at 9 biblical characters, 5 from the Old Testament and 4 from the New Testament, 3 ladies and 6 gentlemen. And I look at where were they and what happened? What were the ups and downs of the season that they were in? Because this is the thing, Albert, if I ask people, what season are you in? It makes people very uncomfortable. They go like, well, and I don't mean to make them uncomfortable. What I've learned is that if you offer them options and say, hey, here's a few options of seasons, which one do you relate to most? They go like, oh, yes, that one sounds like what I'm going through. So what I'm offering in this book is 9 biblical characters and some of the seasons they went through. And as you progress through the book, I think at some point you're going to say, this is what I'm experiencing right now. And that helps you to understand, okay, so this is the season I may be in right now. Now I can learn from this character's good choices and their bad choices. I can learn from what are the things that I need to be looking out for in this type of season of my life. And what are the fantastic opportunities available in this season. Yeah. So that's kind of what the book is about. And that's what the title is all about.
It's very exciting to me. I once heard this one guy, he asked this question, why is it that so many adults are always tired and children always have energy? So, with children, they'll wake up they wake up very early. I don't have children, but I know people who do have, and I know this because they look tired most of the time. Children wake up very early in the morning. They play the whole day. When mom and dad comes home at evening, they're excited. They want to play. When mom and dad tells them it's time to go to bed, it's almost like as if planet Earth is under fire. They have so much energy. And this guy stated this question, like, why do children have so much energy? And older people or grown-up people are always tired. And he said a lot of people think it's because of their age. And he said it's not. Your energy goes where your attention goes. And he said that grown-ups, their attention is mostly in the past or in the future. And if a lot of times when we hear preaching today as well, it's either like we have to deal with the past or we have to have faith for the future. And he said the reason why so many children have so much energy is because they're always in the here and now. And I actually wanted to get a watch at that time, but they don't sell them. I actually wanted to get a watch that just says now. And I think this is what you're trying to articulate. You're trying to articulate like we have to get back to the here and now because this is where things happen.
Yeah, yeah. And what I think is important is that your route towards your destination is going to look different if you're I have different types of seasons, but let's say, for instance, in a plain season, a kind of a normal season, versus if you're in a pain season, you approach life differently, and you can't approach, let's say, your relationship with Jesus or relationship with people necessarily in exactly the same way. And so I seem to think people are just they just look forward, like you said, just future. This is what I need to change. But where are you now? I think that changes the way you approach your goals.
So I'm going to ask you, and we'll see where this goes, because I don't think we're going to have time to go through all 9 properly. But which one of those 9, we'll maybe go to a second one, are you excited about right now?
Okay, well, Alvin, I think Mary, and I'm going to talk to you about Mary right now, and this is Martha's sister, Mary. That one probably excites me the most because I was able to resonate with it very personally. But I just want to mention someone like Jochebed. It's another female character. I didn't even know she existed in the Bible, Albert. Jochebed, yeah.
Okay, so if there's a pregnant woman out there and you're expecting a daughter, there's a name for your daughter, Jochebed.
Jochebed. But for instance, I only discovered her existence in the Bible a few months ago. So for me, those type of characters, and for instance, Jephthah, that's a gentleman that we read of in Judges, in the book of Judges. He's a phenomenally rich character. But I haven't studied the book of Judges my entire life. I only studied it last year for the first time, and that's when I discovered this man and what we can learn from him. So I love Mary, but these new characters that I've discovered, to me, is just so exciting because I realize how rich the Bible is, how empowering the Bible is, because there's these unknown characters that we get to learn from.
Yeah.
But to get back to
I just want to say this. You're not speaking of Mary Magdalene, neither are you speaking of Mary, the mother of Jesus. You're speaking about the sister of Lazarus and Martha.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And what happened is I was studying one of the Gospels a number of years ago. I enjoy working through a whole book of a Bible instead of bouncing around. And as I read through that particular Gospel, I noticed that there was only 3 stories of this Mary, because I think sometimes we get confused about which Mary. So I made a study and I figured out, no, this is the same Mary. This is Martha and Lazarus' sister. And I noticed that there's only 3 stories of her in all of the Gospels. And what caught my eye, Albert, was the fact that in all 3 stories, at the end of that particular story, Martha ended at exactly the same physical spot. And that's what drew my attention. At the end of each 3 stories, we found Martha at the feet of Jesus. But in all 3 stories, she did 3 different things. And that's when I started delving in, and eventually I kind of looked at what the 3 stories represent. And for me, it represents 3 different seasons that most of us can experience. And I gave them names, which I just came up with. They're not biblical names, but I called them plain season, plain as in normal. Those are the seasons where, there's not massive ups or massive crises. You just kind of, ticking along. There's little problems here or there, but as a whole, life is just ticking on. I call that plain seasons. The next one I call pain seasons, like hurt, difficult. I think that's the one most people can relate to. And then the last season I call power season. That's when the breakthrough has come. God has opened the business doors, or new opportunities have embarked, or prayers have been answered. And what I find absolutely astonishing is to see how Mary makes choices in each of those seasons, despite the risks of each of those seasons. To give you an idea, I personally think one of the biggest risks of plain season is apathy. We just become numb. We just kind of go with emotions, We go to church, we kind of read our morning Bible, we do life. That's the risk of plain season. You become a little bit numb in your relationship with Jesus, but also in to some measure in your relationship with people. And you become lazy, Albert. You just become a bit lazy because things are kind of working. So you just go through the routine. And what Mary does in this season, it's the story where Jesus comes and visits her and Martha for the first time. And we know the story is more focused on Martha, where Jesus kind of teaches Martha. But the most astonishing thing is that Jesus is teaching Martha by using Mary's choice as an example. And he said to Martha, Martha, Mary has chosen better.
Wow.
And what has Mary chosen? She's chosen to, in plain season, to choose to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen and learn. And Albert, I was on a telephone conversation with a lady who started reading my book earlier this week, and she phoned me. She says, I'm in plain season. I'm in plain season. I now know what season I am. And she says, and I never realized how important plain season is, because how I explained in the book is plain season is probably the season that we are in most of the time of our life. We are not always in a crisis or always in a difficult season. Most of our lives, we just go through plain season. And those are the investment seasons, because you are not emotionally drained or emotionally excited. Mm-hmm. Your time is not, input into the crisis that you're trying to resolve, or the breakthrough that you're trying to work. You actually have a little bit more emotional, spiritual, and physical capacity. And that's exactly what Mary does. She chooses to go and sit at the feet of Jesus and listen and learn. So
sorry, before you go to the next season, because I think there's something important here that I just want to point out, because I don't know, in my life, it feels to me like I experience all three seasons every day, but
possible.
We'll get to that later. Jesus was a Jew, and in Jewish custom and in Jewish tradition, I don't know how it is today and with Jewish people, but in that time I knew when a Jewish man comes into your house and you were a woman, you were obligated to serve this person. And this is why Martha reacted the way she reacted. She reacted this way because this is what culture and religion obligates me to do in this season. And this is also why she was so, angry at Mary, because like Mary, what religion and what culture obligates us to do as Jewish women is to serve this Jewish man. Yet Jesus said to Mary, you have chosen correctly. In the story, I just want to ask about this. Can a person say in that story, a lot of times people make decisions based on what culture and religion tells them, rather than what Christ actually says in that moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you could just elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, that's why I'm so excited about this, because the most crucial word in that story is the word chosen. Mary had a choice. Martha also had a choice. But Martha, like you said, went with cultural patterns. And Mary, and what that actually means, it means we're powerful, Albert. It means we're powerful. We can't just go like, well, that's just my situation. I personally, one of the phrases that I really detest is, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I really think you have a choice.
Yeah.
You're just afraid to make the difficult choices. Now, I write in this chapter, I say what Mary did was counter-culture, because it was expected of a woman to go and serve and do that. And it was actually not expected of a woman to learn, like intellectual learning. So Mary made a courageous but very wise choice to, in plain season, to say, I'm going to use this time when Jesus is in the room to sit and listen to him. I compare it to kind of, and this may sound very elementary, but our culture, let's say it's a very simple example of it. Our culture is, what are you going to do tonight? Oh, we're going to watch some Netflix, whatever. We're watching this series. And
that's correct in my life for tonight, I have to say.
What do you do?
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Friday night, we're going to watch a movie. There's nothing wrong with it. That's culture. Our culture is on a Friday night. You braai, or you cater with friends, or you watch a Netflix movie. And there's nothing wrong with it. The point I'm trying to make is when you want to live counterculture, sometimes you say, well, maybe this Friday evening I'm going to switch off Netflix. I'm not going to invite friends. I'm going to make a quick supper. And maybe for an hour instead, I'm actually, why? Because I've got a choice. I can choose to invest. So I call plain season the opportunity is to become a disciple in plain season. And the reason is you get to hear the voice of the Father much easier in plain season because there are not crises, you hear him better because you are seeking him for who he is, not for what he can do in your crisis or in your power season. Plain seasons are the most important seasons of our lives. That's where we get to know Jesus for who he is, not for what he can do to us. But then just to go on, the next season is the very well-known story of Lazarus that dies. And I go into trying to understand how Mary must have felt the disappointment, because remember, this is now pain season. She did the religious correct thing. She called for Jesus to come and help when Lazarus was still alive, but very sick. And what I find fantastic about this story is that I compare it to where we are today. We pray about a difficult situation. We pray about our crisis. And then it appears like Jesus doesn't show up. We asked him to please give us that job, or we asked us to please help with that particular difficult relationship. And then nothing happens. Exactly with Mary, Jesus doesn't show up. And the disappointment. So this chapter or that season is a lot about how do you steward disappointment when you have done what you're supposed to do, call Jesus into your problem, but then he doesn't show. He only shows 4 days later when Lazarus has already passed away. And what is phenomenal, Albert, is when Jesus does rock up in their little town, he doesn't run into their house, hugs Mary and say, I'm so sorry for your loss. I've arranged lasagnas for a week, He doesn't come like that. You know what he does? He waits outside of the little village.
Sure.
I'm like, why would he do that? And then he sends Martha to go and tell Mary, please come to me. Jesus calls Mary to come to him. I'm like, gee, Jesus, the kindest thing you could have done is at least just go to her in her deep need, She's mourning, she's disappointed. She's lost her brother, but she's also disappointed because her best friend, and who's this Messiah, didn't come when she asked him to. And what I find phenomenal about that is two big decisions, again, decisions that Mary makes. She was sitting in a house surrounded by all the mourners. She was in this kind of dark hole of depression and disappointment and mourning. Martha comes with a message. Jesus is inviting you. What does Mary choose in that moment? Again, she has a choice. Is she going to stay in this hole of disappointment? Or is she going to get up and out of the disappointment towards Jesus? And that chapter, or that piece I wrote in that chapter, is the advice, I believe, how we get out of disappointment is not to stay emotionally in that cesspool of disappointment, but is to get up with our hearts and go towards Jesus. So the first choice she made is she got up out of her disappointment. She didn't stay there with like, well, if he wants to see me, he can come to me, I have prayed, I have fasted, I have done all the Christian things I was supposed to do, and Jesus hasn't shown up. She gets up and runs towards him. And then the second thing, the choice he makes, yet again, she falls at his feet. Notice this, Albert, she falls at his feet. First time, she just went to go and sit at his feet because it's pain season. Pain season is an intense, dramatic, emotional season. So she falls down at his feet. Here's the second choice she makes. Is she going to accuse him? Because that's what I would have done. Like, I prayed, I did all of that. But what she says is she just says very emotionally and real, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. And what I love about that is it's being real in pain.
I like that. Yeah.
It's not the, glorious Heavenly Father, creator of the universe. That's not how she's, at that moment, she's flat. She's being real with Jesus. And what prevents us sometimes in pain season from connecting with Jesus is that we don't feel like worshiping him because we are overwhelmed with our troubles. And this is a picture of what it means to be real with Jesus in our pain season.
I want to say something on that quickly. Sorry, before you go on, because I have felt this because I have a company, that I, have a company where I do emotional intelligence training and mindset training at companies and stuff like that. And it does feel to me, because it's not like a Christian or a religious setting, I can be much more vulnerable and much more real. Where with my ministry, it does feel to me a bit more like, have a little bit of a mask on. Otherwise you won't be accepted. And I think this is kind of like the realness you are speaking about, because, it's kind of like in the Christian world, we always feel like if in my pain season, if I acknowledge I'm in a pain season, if I acknowledge that I expected Jesus here earlier, it's kind of like, but where's your faith? Maybe you sinned. And a person is almost like, let's act as if everything is okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me personally, it feels to me like I can be more real with the secular space than what I can be with the Christian space.
I can totally understand with that, especially if you've got influence like you have. You want to appear like, not appear, but I mean, you don't want to be too vulnerable, because then it appears like you're struggling. And here Mary goes and she says, Jesus, I've been struggling, but I do know that if you were here, because that's actually a statement of faith. It's not a statement of accusation. It's a statement of faith that I knew if you were physically present, Lazarus would not have died.
Yeah. But one thing I can say on that is, like, I use a lot of research. I use a lot of facts. I use a lot of principles. I use a lot of exciting things that I do. And sometimes I tell stories where I'm vulnerable. I sometimes tell stories and never ever have I ever experienced somebody come to me like the third point you gave, that research article. It's always like, the thing that you went through that you spoke about, that's the thing that changed my life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think vulnerability invites the power of God to come and change and restore things. Whereas intellectuality, I don't know if there's a word like that, forgive me if there's no, but intellectual transfer of information does not so much invite the power of God in our hearts, whereas vulnerability does. And this in pain season, so in the first season, I basically say, I think we need to learn to be disciples, sit and learn from Jesus. In pain season, I think we need to learn what vulnerability before our Father looks. I mean, Albert, I don't know, I think it's a third of the Psalms is just a bunch of complaining, God, where are you? Why aren't you answering? And that is an invitation for us to say we are allowed to be like that. The big thing is, Albert, she goes towards Jesus, not away from him. And that's the invitation.
Before we get to number 3, which is the power season. So as I understand it, there are 9 personalities, and all of these 9 personalities goes through your pain and power season.
No, not necessarily. No.
Not necessarily. Okay.
This is just the story of Mary. Every other character goes through a completely different type of season. So I didn't take these 3 seasons and pull them through all the characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
But obviously, people who are listening would want to hear about the 9 other personalities. So quickly tell us where they and we can get your book.
Albert, I have a website. The website is www.elisemuller. That's E-L-I-Z.
We'll scroll on the screen. It's fine.
Muller. That's so elisemuller.co.za. And that's my website where I have all the stuff the ministry stuff that I'm involved in, and they can order the books there, both books that I wrote. They can order them individually or as a combo and put in their details, pay there, and it will be couriered to your address of choice. So my books are not available in the stores. I distribute them myself, but they are available on my website.
Amazing. Okay, so we'll put the website address in there. Tell me quickly. Can we go to the third one? Are you ready?
Yeah. So the third season I call power season. It's not too short after Jesus. Remember the Lazarus story? He raised him from the dead, which was wonderful. Now, can you imagine the spiritual high in Mary's life? Like, oh my goodness, So God has answered. He doesn't only answer. He did a miracle that she's never seen in her life. And suddenly there's this incredible hype in her life. Jesus then goes away for a short while, and then he comes back. It's a week before Passover. I call it power season. And again, Albert, I don't want to assume that it's not in the Bible, the word power season. It's my interpretation of what she was going through. She's still on a profound high of what God has done in her life. And what sometimes happens with us is we get the business opportunity or the book deal, or we are get engaged, or we find out we're pregnant, these wonderfully new, exciting things. And we stop and we say, thank you, Jesus Christ. And then we run. Then we work the answer. I call it, we work the breakthrough. Whatever breakthrough God has brought, whether it's healing, financial, relational, whatever, we are so excited and we work it. We put all our energy into whatever God has opened up for us in this opportunity. Probably in Mary's story, it would have been like, I use an example. I just say, she started a podcast, she wrote a book, she held women's seminars on how to pray and how Jesus healed. None of that is wrong. None of that is wrong. The point is, Jesus came back into town, and the question is, what did Mary choose when Jesus showed up physically in their town? Was she ministering? Was she arranging conferences so that Jesus could come? No. She took a very expensive oil, and she chose in her power season not to focus on the answer that was given, but on the one who gave the answer.
Wow.
The one who brought the breakthrough. And she anointed Jesus's feet, which was an act of worship. So what I'm trying to explain in that season, Albert, is that when God does bring the breakthrough, we need to be very cautious not to get sidetracked with the answer, the breakthrough, the power, the goodness of God, but to keep a heart of worship, because the risk of that season is pride. The answer to pride is worship, because when you worship Jesus, you focus on him, not on the answer or the open door that he's created. So in power season, the invitation, like Mary, yet again, and interestingly, Albert, do you know what Martha did? She made food again. Do you know what Lazarus did? He sat there again. Everyone did what culture expected him to do. Yeah. Mary again went counterculture.
That's good.
And she was obviously criticized by the choice of oil and all of that, because her heart was to worship Jesus more for who he is than for what he has done for them.
Sure. So basically what you are saying is that in all three seasons, Mary basically did the same thing.
But with a different heart attitude. The first time she just wanted to learn. The second time she was vulnerable and real. And the third time she adored him.
Yeah. It's kind of like this idea of thankfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's just one of the chapters.
Can you let's do one more? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay, you can decide.
Okay, let's choose Jephthah.
Let's go with Jephthah.
Yeah. So he's from the book of Judges, and I identify 5 different seasons that he's in. Again, it's just names that I come up with. And there's a season of rejection, restoration, rulership, recklessness, and revenge. I don't know if you've noticed, but they all start with an R. But it's basically a story of a young boy that was born into an Israeli family, but his father, who was kind of a senior guy in the tribe, slept with a prostitute, and he was the product of that union. And from a very young age, he was rejected.
Okay.
But now it was not his choice. He experienced rejection because of the choices of others. You see, there's a very big difference when you experience rejection because of your own choices. But when you experience rejection, and that's what I'm writing for the readers, is when you're in the season of rejection because of choices other people have made, that has the potential of crushing you so badly, because you can't take ownership for something you haven't done. How do you deal with that? But then what happens? So when he grows up to an adult age, his father passes away, and then his brothers or half brothers reject him. They command him to leave, otherwise they will kill him. So he is from his own family rejects him because of the choices of his father. And then he gets sent away to, or he flees for his own life, and he flees to a town, and the name of that town means good things, good things.
Wow.
And I call that a season. So he experienced rejection, then he goes into a season of restoration, and there he becomes a warrior and a leader. Now, notice this: if he was not rejected, he would not have grown in his physical warrioring skills and in his leadership skills. So nobody wants to be rejected, but God can work all things for good.
Amen.
So after being rejected, he then gets restored in being equipped. It's just basic equipping. It's not super spiritual things. He just raises his skill set. And then the group of people, his tribe, is attacked by enemies. Remember, these are all Israelites. They get attacked. And the leaders of his tribe then hears about his leadership skills and his physical soldiering skills. And they come all the way to come and ask him to be leader of them. But now I elaborate on that. Can you imagine them coming towards you? The last time that, Jephthah saw them, he was pretty much threatened for his life. Now suddenly he's begged to come back and lead them and save them. And in that moment, Jephthah had to make a massive decision. And although the Bible doesn't say he forgave them, the events transpiring shows that he chose in his heart not to say, no, I'm not going to help you. You rejected me. Sorry, you got to sort out your own troubles. Eventually he goes back. So from rejection to restoration to rulership. And then I look at in detail, how did he rule as a leader? And I showed 2 or 3 different things that we can learn from his leadership skills. I'm not going to go into that now for time's sake. And he is very successful. He battles on behalf of the nation. He beats the enemy by the power of God. And he recognizes that it is by the power of God. But then he enters a season of recklessness. And Albert, in some ways, I want to say very honestly, I love the fact that this is included in the Bible, not because of what happened, but because it just makes normal people like you and me feel like, you could have wonderfully good seasons, but you need to be careful not to ride the wave so much that you become reckless. And I distinguish between taking risks and being reckless, because he then makes 1 or 2 decisions, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, but he becomes reckless in how he deals with his own family, and his own daughter suffers profusely because of a little bit of over-eager recklessness on his side. So there's
sorry, I just want to ask this before you, because I'm wondering about this. You spoke earlier that Mary didn't have pride. Do you believe his recklessness was because of pride, maybe?
I'm going to call it, cautiously, I'm going to call it religious zeal. Zeal. Because what is interesting, he made a vow, Albert, but it was a reckless vow. He didn't think. He was so enthusiastic that he made a vow, but it was the wrong vow. And then when he realized that he made a reckless vow, that's where pride kicked in, where he chose to stick to what he promised he's going to do, despite the fact that that was actually contrary to God's law. And what I delve on in that part of the chapter is, what do we do when we realize we've made a mistake? That's where pride kicks in. I think he became prideful then, instead of saying, you know what, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. Because that would have meant, the leader of the tribe now admits he made a mistake, and all those type of things. So how do we respond when we are all reckless? We have all made reckless mistakes, from just something small that you said to maybe a wrong investment or a wrong job choice. We have all done something like that. The question is, how do you steward your heart when you actually discover that wasn't such a good thing to say or to do?
That's important, right?
Yeah. And then the last season in Jephthah's life is the revenge season. And that is, interestingly, that's between two Jewish tribes. And what is wonderful is he's still a good leader. He still wants to do what is right. But then this other tribe of Israel taunts him. And I think they insult him. And he loses it a bit, Albert. And he and him and his tribe kill 42,000 soldiers of another Israeli tribe, which was just revenge. And I tried to distinguish between, well, earlier he was leader of the nation or leader of the tribe, and he fought against the enemies, and he also killed thousands of men. Why is that okay? When now he fights against his own brothers or his own fellow Israelites, why is that wrong? And I think I tried to distinguish the differences. Firstly, when in the first battle, he was defending God's honor. In this battle, he was trying to defend his own honor. And that's why I call it a season of revenge, and how we need to watch out for how we can start becoming revengeful if it's about our ego, not about God's name. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Wow, I love those, and I love those seasons. I think the thing for me is like, you know, when a person reads all of these 9 personalities, and if you read all of the seasons they went through, you can see yourself in all of them. And this is why I say it's so helpful, because it's not only stories that happened thousands of years ago, but it can help us today. So thank you so much. Before I say goodbye, can you just quickly name, we're not going to describe, we're not going to speak about this. Can you just quickly name the other 7 characters you are referring to?
Oh, absolutely. I look at Daniel and his season of favor. I look at Rahab. She's an influencer. I look at Peter, and I look about great expectations and great disappointments. I look at Jairus. He had an absolute emotional roller coaster of a day. I look at Jochebed, the holding on and the letting go seasons. When do you let go? When do you hold on? I look at Joseph, and I call it the gift of hiddenness. And
wow.
Then I look at Paul, life behind the closed doors. And Albert, if I may just quickly add this, at the end of each chapter, I prayerfully thought of between 5 or 7 or 8, sometimes really personal reflection choices, because I wrote this book for individuals, you and me, absolutely. I think it is the opportunity to help us understand where we are and how we can grow in our relationship with Jesus and with people. But I also wrote it for like Bible study groups. And the questions at the end of each chapter offers a group the opportunity. Everyone goes and reads the chapter, and it's also, the chapters do not follow on each other. So you can do chapter 3, then chapter 7, then chapter 9, whatever. They're not, they're independent stories, if one can call it like that. And these questions offer a group the opportunity. So everyone, let's go read about Peter, and then come back, and in a cell group or Bible study context,
that's great.
we can discuss the questions at the end of the chapter, which is the opportunity to actually learn and implement some of these principles that we learn from these characters.
So this is also great, like say, for instance, a home cell group or a church group or just a group of people want to say, listen, let's read this book together. Let's go through it. Let's answer the questions, and let's grow through it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was really amazing. I'm inspired just through those 2 stories, and I'm very, very excited about this book. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for writing the book, and thank you so much for having the courage to write a book that nobody has written before. I think like a lot of Christian books, and I want to say this in the right way, kind of like a lot of them says the same thing, just like in a different way. And here you come with something totally different, and you speak about characters that nobody has ever even heard of, and you apply it to our lives. So thank you so much. I'm really, really excited, and thank you for being in our channel. It's such a great honor for us.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you. And thank you for how you minister through your channel. May God bless it.
Thank you so much, Elise Marie. See you soon again. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.